Well, the date is June the 21st, and there's been some pretty big updates that are coming to the Season of Discovery PTR. A lot of it is class balancing or changes to classes. I mean, one of them for warriors is huge, so if you play a warrior, you're really going to like one of these. And to be fair, there's a good boomy one as well if you're a balanced druid, but the Blackrock Eruption sounds pretty interesting. So the testing focus really still is on the classes, because they've made a number of adjustments since the previous release. They've also significantly buffed Testworks health and damage to allow the fight to last around twice as long. This is going to put a bit more pressure on healers and tanks for better test data. And finally, what I mentioned a minute ago with Blackrock Eruption events, that is on the PTR to test as well. So what is Blackrock Eruption? Well, occurring every 2 hours starting at midnight, the Blackrock Eruption event will occur. While the event's active, additional spawns and environmental hazards will occur in Searing Gorge. This will expand to Burning Steppes in a later update. Players will also gain access to new daily quests, this is at Thorium Point, and players will also receive a large bonus to honor gains while inside of Blackrock Mountain. Now, if you played Classic 2019, you know while everyone's making their way to be fair, even the dungeons like UBRS, LBRS, but primarily Blackwing Lair and Molten Core, it was a PvP hot zone. There would literally just be groups there trying to ruin everyone's night by getting rid of your world buffs. And probably the same thing's going to happen in Season of Discovery, but at least now, Blackrock Mountain is actually a really good place to get honor, providing the honor gains are drastic enough that it's actually going to be worthwhile doing. Because even past the phases of Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, if it's still a really good way to get honor, people might still go back here and carry on just taking groups of people to go and PvP there because it's a really efficient way to obviously get honor. Conversely though, players will gain no honor from World PvP while in Searing Gorge or Burning Steppes while the event is active. So these daily quests are only available during the event, and the whole purpose of these is actually to give you another way to be able to get Thorium Brotherhood rep and Hydraxian Waterlords rep. Now, we already know Thorium Brotherhood and Hydraxian Waterlords are going to have additional rewards at different faction levels, so most people are probably going to want to get, I don't know, let's say Exalted with both of these, so having a way outside of the norm to actually every couple of hours be able to get some bonus rep is pretty cool. Now, in the developer notes around this, the intention of the event is that it's an optional activity to do. And because they're dailies, it doesn't mean every 2 hours you need to go and take part in this. Just at some point during that 24-hour period, you'll jump in the event, you'll get your dailies done for the day, and then that's it. So it's not like every 2 hours there's going to be any benefit from doing this, or that's at least how it sounds at the moment in the early stages. So don't worry, it's not like you're going to be massively behind if you don't know life it and do 12 of these a day. They've also said that they want this to create a flashpoint for World PvP focused on the interior of Blackrock Mountain. This is all feedback driven, and they're going to heavily incentivize you to move your conflicts inside the mountain itself while the event is active, with a sizable honor gain whilst inside the mountain. So outside in the zones, it sounds like during the event you're going to be doing quests and getting your dailies done, or if you've already done your quests for the day or you don't need them anymore, you'll be inside Blackrock Mountain PvPing because you're going to get extra honor. So going back to where they said before that obviously conversely players will gain no honor from World PvP while in Searing Gorge or Burning Steppes while the event's active, that is literally just in the zones. But Blackrock Mountain between the two zones will give bonus honor during the event. Again, the whole point of this is that it's optional though. It's a lightweight optional activity that players can participate in to supplement endgame reputation gains and a bit of gold as well. Overall, I think it sounds pretty cool. All of these sort of events that get added, having any extra content to do is obviously a good thing. So these world events keep popping up, I think it's pretty cool. Now, I'm not going to go through every class adjustment, but just some of the big ones. So for druids, Elune's Fire now extends the duration of Moonfire and Sunfire up to its initial duration, but there's no longer a limit on the number of refreshes per ability. But the bigger one is probably Moonkin Form. It now provides the druid with 2 spell power per the druid's character level and allows Insect Swarm, Moonfire and Sunfire to critically hit, as in the damage over time component. Now that's pretty big. Improved Swipe now also increases the maximum targets that Swipe Bear hits up to 10 targets. Now you might be thinking, that's mental, 10 targets. That's like actually really, really good. There is a reason for it. So they've made adjustments to each of the tank's primary AoE ability to hit a larger number of targets. In most cases, it's 10 or even more. Going into Season of Discovery, they was hoping to maintain some of the rewarding gameplay and challenge that tanks faced in original WoW and keep AoE threat a little bit lower. But what they've found over time is as they're giving all the DPS classes a lot more AoE tools or AoE abilities, however you want to word it, they're now having to do the same with tanks, because there's no good having every class being able to AoE 10 mobs, but a tank can only hit 3, because that's not making it challenging or rewarding content, that's making it a bit mental. They do go on to say, though, with the higher damage that the creatures deal, particularly at or near the level 60 mark, you still might need to actually do more strategic pulls and CC. So it's not like, oh, just because the tank can AoE 10 targets, we can AoE 10 targets, let's go in and pull 10. You might still need to pull one pack at a time and actually use your toolkit to CC some of the mobs. I highly doubt that's going to be the case, even though they've said that that's the case, but we'll have to wait and see. There's been a few changes to where rune slots are as well. So Hot Streak for mages has now been moved to the helm slot, and Rewind Time has now been moved to the wrist slot. For priests, outside of Vampiric Touch now properly gaining additional benefits from your talents, Pain and Suffering's been adjusted as well. So basically, Mind Blast, Mind Spike, and Mind Flay all refresh the duration of one of your dots, being Shadow Word, Pain, Void, Plague, or Vampiric Touch, back to its maximum duration. It will always prioritize refreshing the dot that's got the shortest duration available. And a really big one for AoE is actually Mind Sear. So Mind Sear now also damages the primary target. So for anyone who's not familiar with Shadow Priest, ordinarily the target that you're Mind Searing on, it does damage to everyone around it. But now it's going to do damage to that target as well, which, I mean, I wish we had it like that in Wrath of the Lich King. For Paladins, your Divine Light has been moved to the Cloak rune slot. When you overheal with Divine Light, if you're not aware already, it will actually apply a shield, which will now also apply to the Beacon of Light targets. The Aegis rune is a really interesting one. So it gives the Paladin a 2% chance per talent point in Reckoning to trigger the Reckoning effect when receiving a melee or ranged attack. Now, ordinarily, Reckoning would go off when you receive a critical strike. So you would get a critical strike. Now you'll gain an extra attack on your next attack. They've gone more with a future version of WoW Reckoning, where actually it's just when you receive a melee or ranged attack, which is really cool. And there's been a new spell added to the spellbook, Divine Steed. Now, this is such an awesome ability. You're going to absolutely love it as a paladin if you haven't ever used it before in like future retail expansions. Divine Steed increases the paladin's movement speed by 100% for 3 seconds, 45-second cooldown. I mean, it's just amazing. It doesn't sound that amazing being only 3 seconds, but double speed for 3 seconds on a 45-second cooldown, which is really short. It's amazing, like absolutely epic, and it's not even a rune. You're just going to get it in your spellbook. For rogues, the attack power bonus granted from defense skill effects has been moved from rolling with the punches to blade dance. And Shuriken Toss now grants 1 combo point per enemy hit, which is really cool. And a 30-second cooldown's been added to that. And then really the other big one would be Saber Slash. It now stacks 3 times instead of 5, granting 33% damage increase per stack, up from 20. So they had an issue with a previous PTR build that the Saber Slash change that came via the hotfix in 1.15.2, or Phase 3, were missing. So this adjustment re-implements those changes and improves the usability of Saber Slash as a further adjustment. For Shamans, they're definitely leaning in with some changes that are going to help two-handed enhancement Shamans. The attack speed bonus granted by two-hand weapon specialization rune after landing a melee attack on an enemy with a two-handed weapon equipped has been increased to 50%. Maelstrom weapon has significantly higher chances to proc with a two-handed weapon as well. And one that's relevant for every Shaman is the maximum rank of all weapon imbues now has a 1 hour duration. Just massive quality of life. That's awesome. Obviously, the tanks have got some love as well, because Molten Blast can now hit up to 10 targets, and like I said before, that's just in line with helping all of the tanks with AoE. Warlock get the same thing, where Shadow Cleave can now hit up to 10 targets. The Felguard has gained the Demonic Frenzy ability, causing the Felguard's melee attacks to grant 5% additional attack power for 10 seconds, and this stacks 10 times. Soul Siphon now grants Drained Soul up to 300% increased damage when the targets are below 20% health. And Lake of Fire has been redesigned and now causes Rain of Fire to be instant cast with no channeling time, but now has an 8-second cooldown. I don't know how Warlocks are going to feel about that one, because it's nice on one hand, but the damage buff, I don't know. And outside of another couple of minor changes, you've got Mark of Chaos that's been redesigned. It now causes Curse of Agony and Curse of Doom to apply the Mark of Chaos to the target. This reduces the target's resistances by up to 75 and increases the target's spell damage taken by up to 10%. So no longer will Warlocks need to worry about who's bringing that curse and having to lose damage, because I mean, one of your warlocks at least are going to run this on their cloak because it's removed the shadow burn effect rune, which we already have seen on the PTR, where after striking a target with shadow burn, your next single target non-periodic spell gains 100% increased critical strike chance. So that's no more. That's now been redesigned. So if you run this, you just put your curse up as normal and it's going to reply to debuffs as well, which is pretty awesome. Now, warrior, I'm going to start with the best one first. You're going to get a new ability in your spellbook called Valor of Azeroth. Valor of Azeroth grants all party and raid members 1.5 times the warrior's level in attack power. This is melee and ranged attack power, and it also gives 5% crit chance to all spells and attacks. Now, this is not cumulative with Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer, which is obviously the world buff that everyone gathers in the capital city to obviously get when the head's dropped. But the reason they're making this radical change is to essentially allow warriors to provide themselves and raid members with like a Dragon Slayer light buff. So now it's not as punishing if you wipe or a couple of people die. Let's say your feral DPS dies and one of your rogues die. Your warrior in the group is going to still bring them that well buff. They might have lost the other buffs, but they're still at least they're going to get something. They do mention that, but the main reason for it is because of how drastically worse a warrior plays without well buffs. They say warriors in particular gain a massive amount of power from well buffs, and the class can feel a lot less satisfying without them. So while this won't raise a warrior's overall maximum throughput, it should help bring the floor up in situations where warriors have to go without well buffs. It is an experimental change and it might not stay, but I for one actually think that's really good. And then for a bit more of the boring ones, I suppose, Single-Minded Fury has been adjusted. It now grants a Single-Minded Fury buff that stacks up to 5 times, granting 2% attack speed while you continue attacking the same target with auto attacks. The movement speed effect has been reduced back to 10%, and the threat reduction component was removed. They've also added an additional effect to Gladiator stance to increase rage generation when attacking a target that's not actively attacking the warrior. Thunderclap, of course, as you expect, has been increased up to 10 targets, like the other tank's main AoE abilities. And Shield Slam also gains 15% of attack power as additional damage, and that's probably to try and make Sword and Board be like the way to go. And that's about it, really. That was actually a lot more detailed than I wanted it to be. I wanted it to just be the highlights, but then we start rattling on, or I start rattling on, all of a sudden the video's twice as long as intended. But I'm kind of getting on the hype train for Phase 4 now. I've not been hyped about Season of Discovery since probably Phase 2, if I'm completely honest with you. But some of these changes that they're making look really sensible, and I'm at least going to give it a shot. So I hope you do as well. So I guess all that's left to say is like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.